have a very special guest joining us. Joining us now is Luigi Zingales via Skype from Norway. He is Governor Raghuram Rajan's colleague at the Chicago University Booth School. He also co-authored the book Saving Capitalism from Capitalists. Dr. Zingales, thank you very much for joining us. Does it come as a shock to you that Governor Rajan has spurned an extension? Did you expect him to do that and rejoin you at Booth School so early?
No, I didn't expect him to come back so early. I was hoping that eventually we'll come back, but it was a surprise to me that this happened so fast and with such a clear statement so early.
Rate his 3 years in the Reserve Bank of India.
I beg your pardon?
How would you rate his 3 years, his contribution in the past 3 years to India?
Oh, I think he really contributed to change the way the central bank was run. He's trying to make it more modern in the way interest rates are set through an open market committee, like most advanced central banks. But most importantly, he has really tried to clean up the bank balance sheets and expose a lot of bad loans. I think that part of the problems of the Indian banks, like the banks everywhere else in the world, is that bankers may make a lot of bad loans to their friends or politically influential people. And Raghu tried to clean that up. And I think that is cost him the job.
Professor, I was just coming to this. You know, I was reading some comments that you made to an Indian newspaper when Governor Rajan actually took office, and I'm quoting from that article that was written 3 years ago. You said that he's highly skillful in dealing with all kinds of people and in handling administration, a remarkable quality that you don't often find in an academic. You also went on to say that let me tell you this, that you cannot stereotype Raghu as a Chicago school guy at all. He's not overly focused on that school of thought. Are you surprised then, despite your reading of him as being someone who handles people very, very well, that this decision has come upon us?
I think I am a bit disappointed rather than surprised. I think that there is skill in maneuvering, but it's also a question of principle. I think Raghu is super skillful, but also is very principled, and I don't think he compromises with principle. So my reading of his decision not to run again is that he could not see continuing without compromising his principles, and I think he chose to come back to Chicago rather than compromise his principles.
You know, I'll ask a follow-up question on that. Some of the critics here at least painted him into being this person who has a very westernized concept when it comes to economic policy. He, of course, defended himself in an interview that he gave to us, to our network, saying economics, the principles don't change. They're the same everywhere. It's demand and supply that really determines which way a market goes. How would you describe him, and how would you sort of respond to these allegations that were leveled against the governor that he's too westernized in his thinking? He's not suitable for India.
So, first of all, I know him to be extremely devoted and passionate about his country. And I think he's as Indian as he can be. Second, I think he's right that some principles are the same around the world. And I think that this issue of nationalism, I don't know India very well, but I do know Italy. And many things, unfortunately, are the same. And I think nationalism is used to cut out of power people who are competent. And I think that Raghu is very competent. He's trying to do a tough job. And the only thing you can say against him is that he has spent many years abroad. If that's the best accusation that you can get, bring it on.
Mm-hmm. What should India take on as the legacies of the Rajan era?
I think that his legacy would be that he tried to take on some powerful interest. I think that in many countries, and in India I don't think is an exception, development is kept back by the interest of the few who wants to use power to enhance their own sort of wealth rather than the country's wealth. And I think that Raghu has tried to take this interest on, and I think this will be a long-term legacy.
Okay. Well, one of the achievements of Governor Rajan clearly has been the stability he has lent to the Indian currency. Since he joined with a little bit of luck from commodity prices and a stable government, current account deficit has come down from over 5% in the year before he joined to 1% of the GDP now. As well, India's FX reserves have risen by 30% in the past 2.5 years or nearly 3 years that he's been around. Do you think this is enough bulwark against future attacks on the rupee, or do you think the turbulence can still overwhelm the Indian rupee?
I think that his record is very good. I agree he's been lucky, but as Napoleon said, between a smart and a lucky general, I take a lucky general any time of the day. So I think that he was the right person at the right time. Now, will this be enough to sort of support the rupee and support the future governor? I think depends very much of how the market will interpret this signal. I think that the signal is not a good one. The fact that the Modi's government was unwilling to extend a second term to a person like Raghuram Rajan is not a good signal about the future of economic policy in India. I hope that I would be contradicted, but I think that the market is skittish about this.
Talking about the legacy continuing and the policies and which way India should go from now, one of the big sort of points was the war that Governor Rajan unleashed against broken corporate balance sheets and the way the bank NPMS was really playing out. Do you agree that was really the way to go? And it's really ironic. I mean, the title of the book itself that you co-authored, Saving Capitalism from Capitalists, those are the kind of debates that are underway right now as to whether promoters should take haircuts, whether bankers need to own up and really clean the system. Should that legacy continue, no matter who comes in the Reserve Bank, if India is to actually clean its act and then start building on growth? Because that's what Governor Rajan wanted to do.
Yeah, I hope that that fight will continue. I doubt that he will, because it's not an easy fight. And if somebody of the skill and ability of Raghuram Rajan cannot pull it off, I doubt anybody else can. But I think that this is the crucial element for the development of India. And I think that Raghu understood that and made it the centerpiece of his 3 year of governorship. And I think this will remain his main legacy.
Professor Zingales, one of the things that Rajan has repeatedly spoken about is the way in which central bankers are using monetary policy to snatch demand from one another. What's your own estimate of, say, the remaining part of 2016 or the next 12 months? Does do the global financial markets remain pretty close to getting into some kind of a turbulence, either because of China or because of an FOMC rate hike or because of the euro?
I think that that's an important point that Rajan raised, and I think that's a proof that he is not captured by Western interest, as many critics say. Because he basically, with that statement, took on the central bankers of Europe, of the European, of the euro area, and of the United States for stealing demand from each other at the cost of a developing nation like India. So with that statement and with that campaign, he showed that he has the interest of India as his first and only goal. And I hope that his remarks will remain in the discussion after he's gone, because that's an important issue and one that really undermines the stability of the financial system, of the world financial system, for the years to come.
Professor, you've been a colleague of his for a long time. I hope you know that you're just 5 days younger to him. He's Feb 3rd, 1963. Well, since you are so closely associated with him, where do you see Rajan going from here on? Just pure academia or some other position?
I will see him as the ideal candidate of the as a president of the International Monetary Fund. I think it's about time that these organizations are not run only by the Europeans, and the world is becoming really global. And Raghu is the perfect person to head such organization. I don't know whether this is what he wants, but I think that he would be an ideal candidate for that.
Well, the Napoleon's proverbial luck doesn't seem to be favoring at this point. Neither does India have the votes, nor does Rajan appear to have the backing of the Indian government. So you really think that's possible sometime soon, anytime soon?
I think that, unfortunately, good people like Raghu are brought on when the situation is really bad. And I think that part of the reason why the government, in my view, did not feel the need to reappoint Raghu is because the situation is better. And unfortunately, I can make an easy prediction that there will be times that things are not as good, and Raghu might come handy again.
Professor, I'll just ask you this. I mean, there are those who want to wage a counter-argument saying that, yes, there was growth at 7.9% in the last quarter, but it wasn't really trickling down to the ground level, to the SME sector. Employment wasn't, growing as much as we'd like to see. So there'll always be counter-arguments. How do you assess the Indian macros, the economy right now as Governor Rajan gets ready to leave? We are looking at a net outflow in the bond markets, interestingly. Lots of FII money coming in the equity market, but bonds, we've seen a net outflow. Is there a risk that could accelerate?
Look, I'm not an expert of India macroeconomics, but what I can say that seeing a decrease in inflation, substantial decrease in inflation, with an increase in growth at the same time is fairly remarkable in any nation, and I think is a good legacy for Raghu to leave to the new governor.
Okay. Professor Zingales, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us and making this unscheduled stop and analyzing your assessment of how the Rajan tenure has been for India. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure.